Whenever you hear the name Amsterdam mentioned in conversation, many stereotypical images will immediately spring to mind. Amsterdam has an identity all its own, in fact an identity that sets it apart from all other cities and allows it to entice visitors to come and see it day after day, month after month, year after year. So what does this world-renowned Dutch city, one of Netherlands' best-loved treasures, inspire images of? Bicycles? Windmills? Tulips? Canals? Sounds delightful, and all of these things are truly part and parcel of the whole experience, in the same way that the Eiffel Tower is synonymous with Paris. Buckingham Palace evokes images of London. And the romantic Trevi Fountain will always say Rome. However, there's so much more to Amsterdam than bicycles, windmills, tulips and canals, as you're about to discover. There is a curious elegance to Amsterdam that instantly takes you back to many dramatic historic eras. You can easily imagine yourself walking serenely through the glorious buildings of the 17th century, following in the footsteps of the famous artist Rembrandt as he gathered images for his painting, or cowering in a secret attic like Anne Frank and her Jewish family when the German army on the orders of Adolf Hitler invaded the Netherlands during World War II. Although the seat of the Netherlands government is in The Hague, Amsterdam is the nation's nominal capital. It's also the country's largest city, with a population of almost 750,000, and is, without doubt, the most visited, attracting over 3.5 million foreign tourists every year. As a European country, the Netherlands borders Belgium to the south and Germany to the east. To its north and west is the North Sea. Although the Netherlands is the country's official name, it's also fondly known as Holland, although the provinces of North Holland and South Holland form only a part of the Netherlands. Yet this fascinating European capital most definitely has a split personality, with the rich heritage of the past rubbing shoulders with the partying young tourists and fun seekers of the present day. Due to Amsterdam's long and honourable history of religious, philosophical and political tolerance, which encouraged freedom of speech and the flexibility for individuals to live as they chose, there is a more tolerant attitude here to issues that neighbouring countries fiercely legislate against. So the beauty and serenity of Amsterdam's architecture coexists with areas like the red light district and coffee shops where more than a cappuccino or latte is on offer. According to popular legend, Amsterdam began life as a little fishing village when two fishermen with their pet dog in a small boat landed on the shores of the River Amstel. The village got its name after the damming of this river, Dam in the Amstel, which over time became Amsterdam. Although down through the ages since Amsterdam has evolved on every level, there is nevertheless a warmth to this city that suggests it's maintained something of a village atmosphere, especially when it comes to the wonderful markets that Amsterdam is so famous for. Even so, it can still be quite difficult to know where to begin any tour of the city, as there are thousands of shops and markets, hundreds of museums and art galleries, around 30 stunning botanical gardens and public parks. Not to mention a plethora of eating establishments, cafes and nightclubs to suit, quite literally, every taste. And even better news is the fact that travel around Amsterdam is very easy indeed. The canals, and there are more of them than you'll find in Venice, offer all manner of boat trips, while, like the rest of the Netherlands, Amsterdam is extremely flat, so walking is always a pleasure, and cycling is a great way to get around. Amsterdam is also a very cosmopolitan city, with almost 200 nationalities living together in a spirit of tolerance and harmony, something few other of the world's great cities can boast. Each nationality has brought with it a different culture, often complete with unique cuisine and age-old traditions, which have all been thrown into the melting pot, making Amsterdam both fascinating and surprising. But you don't have to take my word for it, and as we begin to look at Amsterdam in more detail, visiting some of the city's best-loved attractions, all will be revealed. Our first destination is known in Dutch as the Oude Zijde, which basically covers the eastern half of Amsterdam. The name Oude Zijde means quite simply old side, which, as you can see for yourself, describes this part of the city very well indeed. The Oude Zijde was an important commercial centre for shipping, in what has become known as the Golden Age, the period between 1585 and 1672, that saw Amsterdam develop as a crucial trade port for shipping from all over the world. It was during this time that the now familiar cityscape developed as Amsterdam began to grow. Many of the most popular historic buildings and landmarks date from this golden age, and one of the oldest is certainly the Oude Kerk. Of course, the name does rather give this away, as it translates as the Old Church. This magnificent building sits on over 3,000 square metres of ground, with the initial foundations being built on a sandbank to make sure that the construction didn't sink into the marshy ground. This was some 800 years ago, and the original church was built of wood. It was 100 years later that the grand Gothic architecture you can see here today replaced the original single-aisled church, but still it sits on the same foundations that were put in place all those years ago. Underneath the church is an ancient burial ground, which continued to be a cemetery for the inhabitants of Amsterdam right up until 1865, and consequently the entire floor consists of horizontal gravestones. It's said that 10,000 citizens are buried beneath the Oude Kerk, including famous Dutch national heroes like Jacob van Heemskerk, the famous explorer and naval hero, whose suit of armour is displayed in the Rijksmuseum, minus the shattered thigh plate that resulted in his death. He'd been struck by cannonball shrapnel during a particularly difficult battle protecting Dutch merchant shipping, but he nevertheless managed to destroy an entire fleet of 21 Spanish ships. Also buried in the church is Kilian van Rensselaer, one of the Dutch founders of the city that is now New York, and the tombstone of Saskia van Eilenberg, wife of Rembrandt, who was the model for many of his early works. The famous painter and his family were regular visitors to the Oude Kerk, and in point of fact, all of his children were christened here. Up above the gravestone tiled floor is the largest medieval wooden roof in Europe, boasting magnificent acoustics. This is why many musical concerts are held inside the church, as well it being the home of one of the most perfect Baroque organs ever built. It is the third of 3 pipe organs built by Christian Vater and augmented by Caspar Muller for greater power. It is now known as the Vater-Muller organ, and if you look towards the back of the church, you can find the grave and memorial tablet of Jan Pieterszoon Swielink, the church's most acclaimed organist. The church has been constantly renovated down through the ages by 15 generations of Amsterdam citizens, growing in size and becoming more and more visually stunning over time. As Amsterdam increased in size due to the trading routes and new settlers, the church also increased in size to accommodate the worshippers. The stained glass windows depict a myriad of scenes ranging from Bible stories to the lives of Dutch royalty. Three of the windows date back to the 1500s, but most of the stained glass was actually installed during the 20th century, restoring those destroyed in an accidental gunpowder explosion many years earlier that had taken out nearly every one of the brightly coloured masterpieces. In fact, over the centuries, you could say that the entire history of this church has been as colourful as the wonderful stained glass. Having suffered a number of fires, more than the occasional bout of looting, as well as providing shelter for the city's beggars and being used by fishermen for the repair of their nets, it was finally restored as an important place of worship in the 18th century. And what's more, the Oude Kerk, despite its name, has nonetheless moved with the times, welcoming visitors from all over the world and even providing a venue for an exhibition of modern art. It should also be pointed out that the location of the church is rather ironic, standing, as it does, at the very heart of De Walen, which is commonly known as the Red Light District. To the west of De Walen you also see the impressive structure of the Waag, a multi-turreted gatehouse dating back to 1488, which provided an entrance into Amsterdam before the city outgrew its walls. This dominant building stands guard like a proud soldier over the paved square of Newmarket, which used to be a hive of everyday activity in past times, and is a bustling market square today at weekends. The Waag has been used for all manner of purposes, from public executions to the weighing of produce to calculate the tax due, and has also been home to Amsterdam's many and varied guilds. The Waag has been used for all manner of purposes, from public executions to the weighing of produce to calculate the tax due, and also been home to Amsterdam's many and varied guilds. In the 17th century, it also housed a theatrum anatomicum, where student surgeons received anatomical lessons and members of the public could come to watch human dissections, and these lessons were the inspiration for Rembrandt's painting The Anatomical Lesson of Dr. Tulp in 1632. But fear not, there's nothing so gruesome taking place here for present-day visitors. And if the thought of all those dissections hasn't spoiled your appetite, the Waag is now home to a delightful restaurant where you can enjoy an early morning coffee and pastry before moving on to your next destination. Amsterdam's Central Station is yet another imposing building of grand design and worthy of a visit in its own right. The neo-Renaissance style boasts many Gothic touches, helping it to remain in keeping with the old church and the gatehouse that we've just viewed. But it was actually built at the turn of the 20th century as a symbol of rejuvenation for the economy of the Netherlands. The magnificent and opulent facade houses the main transport hub for the city's trams and buses, as well as being the departure and arrival point for Amsterdam's commuter, regional and international trains. Impressive even on a cloudy day, the two large clock towers really do draw the eye, despite the fact that if you look closely, one of them isn't housing a clock at all. What it's showing is the readout for the weather vane that sits on top of the station. Of course, like the Oudekerk, the station has grown and expanded to serve Amsterdam's population, with approximately 150,000 passengers a day passing through, and hopefully admiring the grandeur. And while we're on the subject of grandeur, it's time to move on to the delightful church of St. Nicholas. Interestingly, this wasn't the first church to be dedicated to St. Nicholas, as the Oudekerk, which we saw earlier, was originally dedicated to this festive saint, until the Protestant religion came to dominance during the Reformation. They took over the old St. Nicholas church and rechristened it Oudekerk, leaving the Catholics to find an alternative place to worship. However, this church of St. Nicholas, or Sint Nicolaaskerk, was built after the Catholic emancipation, when religious tolerance meant it was safe for the Roman Catholics to build places of worship again after 200 years of repression. There's another fascinating legacy, however, that came about as a result of this repression, because so many Catholics had no choice but to build private chapels in their houses, where Mass could be celebrated in secrecy. A perfect example of one of these chapels is Our Lord in the Attic, which is now the Museum Amstelkring. This far from ostentatious place of worship was created in a tall, thin house at the edge of a canal, and looking at the exterior, it's hard to believe that an entire church is hidden within these walls. If you climb the wooden stairs to the third floor, you'll be greeted with the extraordinary sight of an extended attic that holds the secret church used by Amsterdam's Catholics so many years ago. Complete with galleries, altar and organ, the church has seating for a congregation of up to 150 people, and boasts an array of beautiful paintings, sculptures and silverware that truly brings the past back to life. You can also find a number of rooms hidden away, including the confessional, the chaplain's bedroom, and a 17th century kitchen. Interestingly, Our Lord in the Attic remained a place of Catholic worship for more than 200 years, despite various changes in ownership. But when the Church of St. Nicholas was completed, the congregation moved to the more appropriate building. At the same time, a group of dedicated followers joined together in order to save Our Lord in the Attic from demolition, and they preserved this place of historic importance for future generations to view, and today this is a thriving museum that's very popular with Amsterdam's many visitors. Now, while you're in Amsterdam, you can't help but notice the canals that dominate the city, running in concentric circles, and this has resulted in Amsterdam being nicknamed the Venice of the North. In the simplest of terms, a canal is a man-made trench filled with water, providing transport links to the rivers and eventually the sea. However, Amsterdam's canals are much more than a functional transport system. They are also a beautiful addition to the character of the city, that everyone appreciates. The Flower Canal, known in Dutch as the Bloemgracht, is the stateliest of all the canals, and a leisurely cruise down it will reveal some of Amsterdam's most traditional architecture. Ironically, the most popular area, and most expensive to live in, was actually built in the 17th century to house the working classes. This is Jordan, a district that has gradually become so upmarket that only the very rich can live here. In fact, the Flower Canal is known by the alternative title of the Herengracht of the Jordaan, which means the Gentleman's Canal of Jordan. The Flower Canal is lined with burgerhouses, with the three picture-perfect examples being numbers 87 to 91, built in 1642 by Hendrik de Keyser. Each of these houses has stepped gables, with paned glass being vital to the design. Instead of the traditional numbering system, which was introduced in the 19th century, the gable stones acted as house names, with the three aforementioned mansion houses depicting a farmer, a townsman, and a seaman. Nevertheless, the most famous house in the area of Jordan was nothing to do with Hendrik de Keyser or classic architecture, as its significance belongs to a much later age. This ordinary-looking building, which resembles a very mundane block of flats, became the secret hiding place of the young diarist Anne Frank and her Jewish family when the Germans occupied the Netherlands and, of course, Amsterdam during World War II. The Second World War began with the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, whose policies on territorial conquest and racial subjugation brought death and destruction to tens of millions of people. Some of the most badly treated were of the Jewish faith, with more than 6 million killed as a result of the Holocaust. When the Germans invaded the Netherlands and occupied Amsterdam, the Frank family were running a thriving business in Prinsengracht 263. But with the arrest and deportation of Dutch Jews to concentration camps, they knew they were in terrible danger. The Frank family took the brave decision to move into the annex of the office building, with a specially constructed movable bookcase to hide the entrance. During the 2 years that they were in hiding, Anne Frank kept a diary of what happened, including her thoughts and feelings. She wanted to be a writer when she grew up, and her diary proved to be her legacy to the world. But sadly, shortly before World War II came to an end, the Frank family was betrayed, arrested, and deported to the concentration camp at Belsen, where Anne died of typhus. Tragically, only her father survived the experience, and when he returned to Amsterdam, he found that friends had managed to rescue some of the family's personal effects, including the diary of Anne Frank. This diary was eventually published and became a worldwide phenomenon, and for the people of Amsterdam, the amazing true story of Anne Frank's diary meant that this house became a symbol of their survival, opening as a museum in 1960. Over 9,000 visitors made a pilgrimage to this place in the first year alone, and many more continue to come here year in, year out, as each new generation discovers this incredible story. Moving a little further down the canal, you'll see a group of handsomely restored almshouses dating from 1616. Collectively known as Kleishofsche, the buildings essentially provided housing for the poor and elderly, subsidised by the Catholic Church. However, after the Reformation, during the 17th and 18th centuries, the Protestants leased the properties to rich merchants and traders. The most famous was a man called Claes Kleist Anslo, a wealthy textile and cloth merchant who owned many of the converted almshouses, hence the naming of the properties. The beautiful street facade leads through to courtyards surrounded by smaller houses, equally as pretty, with serene gardens and a thriving community concealed within. Look out for a plaque on the oldest of the houses, which carries Anslo's coat of arms, and a stone plaque which reads Anslo's Hofsche. You may also spot the distinctive gable stone at number 52, owned by a teacher in 1630, which is aptly known as the House with the Writing Hand. One of the busiest places to visit in Amsterdam is the appropriately named Dam Square, created in the 13th century when a dam was built around the River Amstel to prevent the sea from flooding into the city, and also to connect the settlements on either side of the river. As the dam was built up, so the city of Amsterdam expanded around it. Whatever the weather, Dam Square is always host to some form of entertainment, delighting tourists and locals by equal measure. But perhaps more importantly, Dam Square is the epicentre of Amsterdam itself, with canals and roads stretching out from here, while being surrounded by many monuments, historical buildings, churches, grand hotels, and a Madame Tussauds waxwork museum. It even houses a fun fair for special occasions in Amsterdam's calendar. This square is conveniently close to the central station, making it the first port of call for many people coming into Amsterdam, as well as the last view most will see before leaving the city as well. Originally, as the square had also been the trading place for many business people travelling up the Amstel to sell their wares, there was also a weigh house, which would have been a little like the Waag Gatehouse. But this was demolished in 1808 on the order of Louis Bonaparte, younger brother of the more famous French Emperor Napoleon. Louis had served under Napoleon in the French army, rising to the rank of general by the very young age of 25, and was then made King of Holland by Napoleon. He was only expected to act as a figurehead governor, but Louis took his role very seriously indeed, and wanted to do the best he could for the people of Holland. Legend has it that when he first arrived, he made every effort to learn the Dutch language quickly, so that he could show his new subjects his commitment to their culture. But unfortunately, when he gave a speech to introduce himself, what he said actually translated as the Rabbit of Holland, rather than the King of Holland. Nevertheless, the new King of Holland took up residence in one of the loveliest buildings in Dam Square, the Royal Palace, or Koninklijk Palace, which had originally served as the city hall. King Louis demolished the Weigh House because he complained that it obstructed his view and prevented his subjects from looking upon the grandeur of the Royal Palace. This stunning palace, with an incredible 114 windows, was built of yellowish-white stone originally, though the weather over time has beaten it to a more nondescript shade of grey. It was designed to reflect the seafaring prosperity of the Dutch in their golden age. At one point in history, this was the largest administrative building in Europe, and frequently referred to as the eighth wonder of the world. On the top of the palace, there's a tall domed cupola from where the ships that brought about Amsterdam's prosperity could be seen sailing along the River Ege and out to sea, complete with a weather vane in the form of a cog ship, a classic symbol of this great city. The interior of the palace is, as you would expect, equally impressive, full of marble, sculptures, paintings and tapestries, with most of the furniture on display dating back to the time of Louis Bonaparte's reign as king. In fact, much of the design was based on the assembly halls of ancient Rome, noted for their beauty and opulence. However, from 1936 onwards, the royal palace became a state property and is now one of 3 palaces at the disposal of Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, and is used mainly for official state functions. If you look directly to the right of the royal palace, you'll see another impressive building that sits on the edge of Dam Square. This is Nieuwe Kerk, which translates, as you've no doubt already worked out, as the New Church. Even so, work actually began on it way back in the 14th century, because as Amsterdam grew, so did this church. You'll notice that this church is towerless, although plans for a tower were there from the beginning. However, its location on the Dam Square made up for this deficiency, and even without a tower, it quickly surpassed the Oude Kerk, or Old Church, in popularity and patronage, especially after the Napoleonic Wars. Also, as you would expect, being so near to the royal palace, the Nieuwe Kerk is closely associated with the Dutch monarchy, and great royal occasions, including coronations and weddings, take place here. Even so, like many of Amsterdam's attractions, this church is full of surprises, including an exhibition of artifacts and hidden treasures from Afghanistan. On the south side of Dam Square stands the National Monument. This is the most recent addition to the eclectic treasures of this historic place, being unveiled on the 4th of May 1956, Holland's National Day of Remembrance, by Queen Juliana. Towering upwards to nearly 75 feet in height, this obelisk stands as a memorial to the many Dutch soldiers who perished during the Second World War, as well as those who died as part of the country's resistance movement. It also commemorates the liberation of Holland and celebrates the peace that was restored with the end of the war in 1945. Decorated with sculptures that echo the reason for its being, war is portrayed as 4 male figures, while peace appears as a woman and a child, with the resistance portrayed as 2 men with dogs. The National Monument is flanked by 2 stone lions, and embedded within are urns that carry soil from the grounds of each of Holland's 11 provinces, as well as an urn carrying soil from the Dutch Cemetery of Honour in Indonesia. Although the Dam Square is the best known in Amsterdam, there's another square, the Rembrandtplein, situated nearby, that is equally as popular. It too was originally a marketplace, in this case a butter market, with origins in the 1600s, where all dairy produce was bought, traded and sold. Built on the remnants of the old port, it's now become a thriving tourist spot, populated with cafes and restaurants. The Rembrandtplein name was adopted in the late 1800s, when a statue was erected to Amsterdam's best-known resident, the artist Rembrandt. Appropriately posing in rather a relaxed and casual manner, the painter watches over a scene taken from one of his most famous masterpieces, The Night Watch, where the fusiliers have been brought to life from the canvas to become delightful bronze statues. Visitors can stand amongst the sculptured figures and become a part of the story, which is exactly what the Russian creators of this more contemporary night watch intended. As well as having their photographs taken with Rembrandt and his night watch, the many visitors who head for the square are nevertheless often in search of something a little more modern and lively, because at night the square becomes a very different place, with a whole host of restaurants, friendly bars and inviting nightclubs to choose from. Amsterdam is a wonderful city for those in search of a party atmosphere, and people do come here specifically for the nightlife, especially those celebrating stag or hen weekends. You can't go far in Amsterdam without returning to the water. And although we've already looked in some detail at the canals and the buildings that can be found alongside them, some of Amsterdam's loveliest sights are actually the bridges that make travelling around the city a much more practical proposition. The most famous of these constructions is the Megabrug, but most of us know it fondly as the Skinny Bridge, so named it's been suggested because the original wooden structure was incredibly thin. At night, the bridge is lit up, creating the most romantic of atmospheres, and this is a very popular destination for couples visiting Amsterdam, especially as there are now an increasing number of honeymooners choosing this truly lovely city as a more economical European option than Paris. By day, the Mega Bridge is an important location where cycling commuters can cross the Amstel River to reach the west of the city, and there's some debate about how it became the Mega. Some believe it was because it was built by two sisters who lived on either side of the river, called Mega, while others believe that, as in Dutch, Mega also means skinny. It's another reference to the first bridge that crossed the river here, which, as we already know, was famous for being rather thin. Whatever the reason, however, in 1871, the original skinny bridge was replaced by a much wider version, due to the increased traffic that needed to pass over the River Amstel, but it still maintained the charming traditional style, complete with a drawbridge to allow boats through. Another of Amsterdam's famous bridges also had an original wooden design, and despite being called the Blauberg, translated as the Blue Bridge, you can see straight away that this bridge definitely isn't blue. However, the first wooden structure here was painted blue, and this is where the name came from. Richly decorated with leaf motifs, masks and imperial crowns on the top columns, the bridge is an absolute delight. The lanterns are also shaped like crowns, and the lantern poles are adorned with decorations that relate to shipping, with the bridge's overall design inspired by the Pont Alexandre, the third bridge that spans the River Seine in Paris. If you're looking to delve a little deeper into Amsterdam's rich and varied history, then there are many museums that offer every opportunity to do this. The Theatre Museum stands at the Herengracht Canal, and if the beautifully decorated 18th century interior isn't impressive enough, you can search through the rooms for costumes, sets and memorabilia. One of the top attractions is this beautiful chamber theatre commissioned by one of the richest regents in Amsterdam in 1781. He used the theatre to stage performances for family and friends, and looking at this exquisite work, it must have been quite wonderful to watch a play set in such lovely surroundings. The beautifully hand-painted scenery is made up of 3 sliding screens at the sides, friezes across the top with a backdrop, and was designed so the various parts could be changed swiftly and simultaneously. You can even try it out for yourself with a model theatre in the same room. On the ground floor, there's an impressive exhibition dedicated to the world of dance, and if you climb the magnificent spiral staircase to the first floor, you can find many costumes and exhibits, as well as a series of films about theatrical production. After the glamour of the theatre, our next port of call is the Dutch National Museum, the Rijksmuseum, which houses extensive collections of paintings ranging from the 15th to the 20th century, alongside medieval and modern-day sculptures, Renaissance furniture, and a whole range of Asian art and artifacts that are an intrinsic part of the Netherlands' rich trading heritage. But before rushing into this undoubtedly wonderful museum, be sure to look out for the triangular sculpture garden, which is often missed due to visitors' eagerness to view the exhibits inside. It's well worth taking the time to wander around this intriguing garden and see the intricate sculptures in their remarkable setting. The building itself, with an elaborate neo-Gothic style facade in red brick and coloured tiles, was opened to the public in 1885, and at some point during any visit to Amsterdam, most people will today make their way to the Rijksmuseum. There's a great deal to see here, and chances are you won't have the time to do the wide range of exhibits justice. But the paintings of Rembrandt are without doubt an absolute must, as are those of Frans Hals and the Master of Light, Jan van Meer. And of course, you'll have the perfect excuse to come and visit Amsterdam again, which has to be a very good thing indeed. The museum has in recent years undergone a major restoration and renovation project, which has meant many of the exhibits being placed in the Philips wing for the duration. However, the finished result ensures that the nation's treasures are accessible to even more people, proving that the Dutch take their art and artists very seriously indeed. At this point in the proceedings, we've already talked quite extensively about Rembrandt being one of Holland's best-known artists and Amsterdam's most famous resident. But mention the name of Vincent van Gogh, a more recent Dutch master, and the whole world will know precisely who you're talking about. This tragic genius began painting in 1880, working in Holland, the land of his birth, for about 5 years before moving to Paris and then later settling in the south of France. Arguably, the most famous of his paintings is simply called Sunflowers, and it's been transferred to posters, postcards, greeting cards, and almost every modern decorative item imaginable. For anyone who'd like to know more about Van Gogh, one of art's most iconic painters, the prestigious Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, which houses the biggest collection of his paintings in the entire world, is well worth a visit. It consists of 2 buildings, the main structure, opened in 1973, and the exhibition wing, opened in 1999. The main part of the museum was built with a modernist approach, favouring geometric forms and light, open spaces, while the exhibition wing was constructed in perfect harmony by a Japanese architect whose aim was to fuse Eastern symmetry with Western geometry. Even if you've never been a fan of this painter's work, this is one artist that you should take the time to see in the original, as the man himself intended. Visitors to this museum will never forget the colour and texture of Van Gogh's paintings, and quite rightly, it has now become an integral part of any Amsterdam sightseeing tour. So far, we've explored many of Amsterdam's most well-known attractions, but there's one precious treasure that this city is famous for the whole world over that has a very expensive price tag indeed. This is the home of Costa Diamonds and is called a factory, even though it looks nothing like one. There are guided tours featuring skilled craftsmen at work, cutting and polishing diamonds, and this has become one of Amsterdam's most popular tourist attractions. Costa Diamonds first became famous due to the patronage of Queen Victoria, the reigning monarch of the United Kingdom from 1837 to 1901. Her husband, Prince Albert, commissioned the company in his wife's name to repolish the enormous Koh-i-Noor diamond, the largest in the world at that time, and part of the crown jewels, and the company has enjoyed an enviable reputation ever since. Like so many of Amsterdam's commodities, however, diamonds are not a natural Dutch resource, and it was the city's significance as a port that brought the traders here. But if you want to know more about Amsterdam's seafaring connections, moving on, this is the Netherlands Maritime Museum, with the magnificent Dutch title the Netherlands Scheepvaart Museum. It used to be a naval depot and storehouse, which was constructed in 1656 to house the once impressive arsenal of the Dutch Navy. But it became the Maritime Museum in 1973. Moored outside, in a permanent berth on the protruding jetty, is a 20th century replica of an 18th century ship, appropriately called the Amsterdam, that sailed between the Netherlands and the East Indies. Now, although it's perhaps a cliché, no visit to the Netherlands would be complete without a trip to see a windmill. And the same holds equally true for even the shortest break to Amsterdam. This is the De Goeie windmill, which is just a short walk from the Netherlands Maritime Museum. It was built in the 18th century and was the first corn mill to use streamlined sails. It was rebuilt and restored in 1925 by the Amsterdam City Council as a fine example of their heritage. Today this is a private residence, but on the first Saturday of the month the sails are allowed to turn. Sitting next to the windmill is the Ij Brewery, named after Amsterdam's famous river. It also has a cafe-type pub, which is very popular with locals and tourists alike, who are afforded a fantastic view of the windmill from here. The area where the De Goeie windmill is situated once used to be green parkland beyond the city walls, where many Amsterdam residents spent their leisure time. Called Plantage, this was the city's first official park, dating back to 1682, and after mixed fortunes, it's now become a very classy district. One of the loveliest parks in Amsterdam can be found in the Plantage, just a short distance from the De Goeie windmill. The Hortus Botanicus, as its name suggests, is a botanical garden, but it started out as a small herb garden for doctors and pharmacists over 300 years ago. Then, quite literally, it grew and grew due to the Amsterdam shipping trade, with merchants bringing home exotic seeds and plants from the far eastern countries they regularly travelled to. At the dawn of the 18th century, the gardens became famous for being the first place outside of Arabia to succeed in cultivating the coffee plant. Nowadays, the gardens house virtually every plant imaginable in the climate-controlled glass-domed palm house, while a medicinal herb garden attracts medical students from all over the world. And on that most efficacious note, sadly our time in Amsterdam has run its course. This is, without doubt, one of the world's brightest and most vibrant cities, where Europe's younger generation certainly knows how to enjoy a good time. Nevertheless, the shadow of the darker clouds of history, most notably the Nazi occupation of the city during World War II, gives Amsterdam a much more reflective side to its nature. The many thousands of visitors who make their way to the Anne Frank Museum leave in no doubt about the terrible hardships that the Dutch people, especially those of the Jewish faith, suffered at this terrible time. Although a sobering experience, a visit to this museum is fascinating, and by remembering the victims of the Holocaust in this most tangible manner, there's no danger of the true horrors of war ever being forgotten. Amsterdam is also a city full of surprises, in part due to the eclectic mix of people who've made their home here, and you'll find all manner of delights from many different cultures to experience. So be sure to keep an open mind when it comes to sampling the very varied culinary offerings that this multicultural city is rightly famous for. This diversity of cultures also contributes to the wonderful atmosphere of Amsterdam, which is one of the most welcoming cities of the world, no doubt harking back to the seafaring traditions that first shaped this Dutch port in its golden age. And with canals endowing Amsterdam with the grace and elegance of Venice, museums and art galleries on a par with those found in London, Paris and New York, historic buildings to rival those of Rome and Madrid, this is a city worthy of any traveller's attention and is guaranteed to make everyone who comes here feel right at home, from arrival to departure and all points in between.